The theater was quiet in a way that felt soft rather than empty. The lights above the stage were dim, like a sky just before sunrise. In the audience, people shifted gently in their seats, holding cups of coffee, whispering, and waiting. The large red letters of the show's name glowed on the back wall, steady and calm. On the stage, a single stool stood near the center. Beside it was a small wooden box with tiny holes carved into the sides. Nothing else moved. Behind the curtain, a young Filipino boy stood very still. He was not tall, and his shoulders were narrow, but he carried himself with careful attention. His hands rested together in front of him. Inside the wooden box at his feet, a cat breathed softly. The boy closed his eyes for a moment and listened to that sound. In and out, in and out. It helped him feel less alone. This boy had traveled very far to be here. He came from a small neighborhood where the streets were narrow and busy, and the houses leaned close to one another like old friends. In that place, dreams were often quiet things, kept inside and protected from disappointment. For him, this stage felt bigger than anything he had ever imagined. It felt like standing at the edge of the ocean for the first time. When he was younger, people often laughed at him. Not in a cruel way, but in a way that still hurt. They laughed because he talked to animals more easily than to people. They laughed because he trained his cat instead of playing louder games. Some said it was strange. Others said it was impossible. Cats, they said, do not listen. Cats do not perform. Cats do what they want. At home, the boy never argued. He simply smiled and returned to his quiet work. Each morning before school, he practiced gentle movements with his cat. He never raised his voice. He never rushed. He believed that trust grew slowly, like a plant reaching for light. His cat had once been small and frightened, rescued from a wet alley during a storm. They had saved each other in different ways. Now, on the other side of the curtain, a stage assistant gave a small nod. It was time. The curtain opened. The light spread across the stage, warm and steady. The boy stepped forward, carrying the wooden box carefully in both hands. He placed it on the floor and sat on the stool. For a moment, he did nothing. He simply breathed. The audience leaned in without realizing it. Something about his stillness asked for patience. Slowly, he opened the lid of the box. A soft gray cat lifted its head. Its eyes reflected the stage lights like tiny moons. It did not rush out. It looked at the boy first. He gave a gentle tap on the floor, a signal practiced many times. The cat stepped out, calm and unafraid, and sat beside him. A few people in the audience smiled. Some raised their eyebrows. A cat act was not what they expected. The music began very quietly. It was simple and slow, with long pauses between notes. The boy lifted his hand, and the cat stood. He moved his hand in a small circle, and the cat turned once, then twice, graceful and controlled. There was no rush. Each movement had space around it, like words spoken carefully. As the performance continued, the cat followed invisible paths through the air. It stepped onto the boy's shoulder and balanced there, tail steady. It leapt down and waited. It lay on its back when asked, paws curled softly. There were no tricks that felt loud or forced. Everything felt like a conversation. The audience grew quiet, not the quiet of boredom, but the quiet of attention. Halfway through the performance, the boy stood and took a few steps back. He placed a small bell on the floor. He rang it once, then stepped away completely. The cat looked at him, then at the bell. Slowly, it walked forward and tapped the bell with one paw. The sound was clear and gentle. A ripple moved through the audience. This was the moment the boy had worried about most. This was where things could fall apart. At home, sometimes the cat refused this part. Sometimes it simply sat down and watched him, as if asking for more time. He had learned not to force it. Trust could not be pulled like a rope. He knelt on the stage, lowering himself to the cat's level. He did not signal. He waited. The music softened even more, almost fading away. The lights dimmed slightly. The cat's ears twitched. It looked at the boy's face, then at the audience, then back again. After a long pause, it walked toward him and placed its head against his chest. The boy closed his eyes. This was not the planned move. This was not in practice. But it was real. He wrapped his arms gently around the cat, holding it as one would hold something precious and fragile. The audience felt the shift, even if they could not explain it. This was no longer just a performance. It was a moment of shared trust, offered openly. The music ended. For a second, nothing happened. Then the theater filled with applause. It was not sudden or explosive at first. It rose slowly, like a wave building strength as it moved. People stood. Some wiped their eyes without knowing why. The boy bowed, still holding the cat, and felt his chest tighten with emotion. He had not expected this. He had hoped, but hope and reality are often very different things. As he walked off the stage, his legs felt unsteady. Behind the curtain, he sat down and pressed his forehead lightly against the cat's fur. He whispered words in his own language, words of thanks and comfort. The cat purred, deep and steady. Later, when the noise had faded and the lights were turned off, the boy sat alone in a quiet room. He thought about the long nights of practice, the laughter he had endured, and the moments he almost gave up. He thought about the small alley where he found the cat, wet and shaking. None of it felt small now. He understood something new. The problem was never that people doubted him. The problem was that he once doubted himself. He believed he needed to prove something loud and impressive. But what moved people most was honesty, patience, and care. When he returned home weeks later, the streets looked the same. The houses still leaned close. But something inside him had changed. Children gathered around as he practiced in the open air. They watched quietly. No one laughed this time. Some asked questions. Some simply sat beside him. The boy smiled. He did not know what the future would bring. He did not know if he would stand on another big stage again. But he knew this. He would continue to move slowly, to listen carefully, and to trust the quiet bonds that made life meaningful. At night, as he lay down to sleep, the cat curled beside him, warm and familiar. Outside, the city breathed and rested. Inside, the boy felt a deep and steady peace. The world had seen his unbelievable performance. But what mattered most was that, at last, he believed in it too.